Does the following scenario sound familiar to you? You see a job that you think you're really well qualified for. You submit an application and you wait patiently for a response. Lo and behold, you do get one a couple of weeks later, but it's a rejection. And you wonder what the heck happened because you didn't even get so much as a recruiter phone screen. Well, stick around because in this video, I'm going to explain why that's happening more frequently today. Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff. Today I want to demystify the hiring process a little bit more for you. Listen, I sense the frustration of people who are in active job search and are applying to position after position and getting rejected left and right without so much as a recruiter phone screen. And these are jobs that people feel that they're relatively qualified for. And I got news for you. The reason why you're getting rejected isn't even because you're not qualified, at least in a lot of cases. There's actually two major reasons why you are getting rejected. It's because you have a competition issue, and you're not doing that great of a job of marketing yourself. So let's dive into those two things in more detail and hopefully give you some corrective actions to get you on the right foot to landing your next job. But before we get into that, if you're interested in learning how to reclaim control in your job search and your career, make sure you sign up for my free newsletter. And in it, I share actionable and concise tips on how to approach resume writing, interviewing, LinkedIn networking, and your careers with a higher degree of strategy so that you can reclaim your authority and start to act like the CEO of your career. Keep in mind, it's absolutely free, and I hope to see you there. All right, so there's a lot of misconceptions about what exactly happens behind the scenes, about how recruiters don't know how to recruit, about companies who are overly picky, and hiring managers that have impossible standards. And of course, some of that stuff is true. There are recruiters out there who don't know how to recruit. There are hiring managers that are overly picky, and there's companies that have broken processes. All that stuff can be true. However, that's only a small segment of jobs and job postings. The real problem is that you have a competition issue. So in a normal job market, and for a reasonably well-known company, we might average between anywhere from, let's say, 25 candidates that apply to a job all the way up to several hundred. And in a less advantageous job market, which I would say we're probably in as I record this video, we might get anywhere from 100 applications for a job all the way up to over 1,000 for particularly popular positions. I'm thinking those remote jobs that everybody seems to covet. Now, obviously 1,000 people is a lot of competition to get your name seen. However, it can be done. You have to keep in mind that a lot of these candidates that are applying for these jobs are simply not qualified at all. And I want to break down what exactly that looks like on the back end and how the funnel typically works on an ATS system and how we get down to the candidates that we actually do call. But before we get into that, I think it's really important to understand that there are criteria that are set forth by the hiring manager. And normally when they have a new job posted, the recruiter will meet with the hiring manager and conduct what's called an intake call. And in that intake call, they essentially meet and discuss what exactly are you looking for? So in other words, it's like a wish list that they create. And the hiring manager is giving a list of requirements that they want the recruiter to go off and find. So there'll be inflexible requirements and then some nice to haves. And in general, the recruiter will walk away from this conversation with a pretty detailed list of what the hiring manager is looking for specifically. So essentially, their job is to go off and take that list, that wish list, and then find the right candidates that match it as closely as possible. And there's a metric that recruiters are graded on time to fill. And so if they send candidates that aren't well aligned to the job posting or what the hiring manager is expecting, then they're going to get candidates rejected deep into the process, and it makes them have to start over again. And here's the thing, the clock doesn't stop. Keeps on going. And so a recruiter who loses a candidate at the very tail end of an entire recruiting process can be pretty catastrophic for their metrics. So they have a vested interest in finding the right candidates that align to what the hiring manager is expecting. So I'm kind of setting the stage here as we start to look through candidates. I want you to put your recruiter caps on and follow along. So obviously I don't have a job that I'm recruiting for in this specific example, and I don't have an ATS system that I can show you, because honestly, I wouldn't even show you if I could, because that would be breach of confidentiality. It's people's contact information and all that stuff. So we're going to have to kind of pretend, and I've created a very basic ATS system in the form of an Excel spreadsheet that you can follow along with. And I'll use a semi-fictitious job as the basis for what we do in the recruiting process. And the reason why I say that is that I actually, not too terribly long ago, had a position. It was a very senior role. It was a senior level IT role. It was a senior director of information technology. So it was a fully remote job, well-paying, well-regarded, all of that kind of stuff. We posted the job on a Tuesday around 3 p.m. And then by the following day, Wednesday at close of business, so 5 p.m., so it's about 26 hours, we got 750 applications, and we actually got so many that we had to shut it down because we couldn't get through them all quickly enough, and we had certain metrics that we had to go through and get back to candidates in a certain amount of time. Otherwise, the recruiters would get dinged for it. And I also want to point out that a recruiter is not just recruiting one job. They may have as few as 5 jobs if they're working for a big company like Google, where the jobs are really difficult to fill. Or they may have as many. I think the peak in my career I had was 45 recs. So in a requisition is a job posting. So kind of think of it as a requisition as a job that you own from cradle to grave. So when I had 45 recs, you got to keep in mind that I've got job postings for all 45 of these jobs, and they're all different positions with different hiring managers doing different things and different candidates in different statuses. So if you just kind of set the stage and visualize what that would look like in your inbox as we go through this exercise, because we're doing this for every single position. So let's suppose that we have 750 applications, just like I had for that one position. I want to show you visually what it looks like. So if you look, I'm going to just scroll through this really quickly, well, as quickly as I can, to let you see the number of candidates that were in our process. And again, this isn't an Excel spreadsheet. This is not an actual ATS system, but this is just to kind of give you a visual representation. So we are scrolling and scrolling, and each one of these is a bright-eyed and cheery job applicant who is ready for a phone call. And keep on going. Keep in mind, this was 24 hours. And I think there's a few more. So that's the number of candidates that we received, and again, in that 24-hour time frame. So obviously 750 candidates is not a reasonable number of candidates to interview. So as a recruiter, I need to figure out a way to narrow down this list to get it to a more manageable number. So I'm going to refer back to my intake call notes and look for the requirements that the hiring manager set forth, and I'm going to start to screen based on them. So what we're going to do is screen by the first required skill that the hiring manager set forth as a must-have. So as we add this in, you can see that some of the candidates have the skill, but a lot of them don't. In fact, the majority of them don't. So we can get rid of a lot of these candidates who just don't meet any of the baseline requirements. Now keep in mind, this is a senior director of information technology that has probably 75 direct reports. And a lot of the candidates that will apply for this job will not be qualified at all. That means that they will be lacking the base level skills. They will have never even worked in information technology before. In some cases, there'll be interns that have no relevant experience. So I'm going to look for somebody that has that specific skill, and I'm going to remove anybody that doesn't have it. So now I've gone from 750 down to 119 candidates, and now all of these candidates have at least self-identified that they have a specific skill. Now, 119 candidates is still way too many for a recruiter to go through and conduct interviews. So we want to screen down even further. So just having that specific skill is not going to be enough. We actually have to see it in demonstration. In other words, they have to have that skill demonstrated. So that's the next bar, or the next criteria that we're going to use to filter down even further. Let's go ahead and just get rid of the people who do not have experience or demonstrated experience. So now we are down to 23 people who have the right specific skill and the right experience. So you can see the number of people there. Now, even 23 is going to be too many for a recruiter to realistically go through and conduct interviews. If you think the number of hours it will take to conduct interviews on 23 people times all the coordination effort to get them on the calendar, plus they've got 15, 20, 30 other jobs with this many people, there's just simply not enough time in the day or the week to get anything done. So we have to narrow that down even further. So the next criteria that's required by this particular hiring manager is that they have to have at least a bachelor's degree. Now, some hiring managers are particular about this, other managers aren't. It just depends on the company, it depends on the hiring manager. But in this case, let's say, hypothetically speaking, we need somebody that has at least a bachelor's level degree for this level of position. So let's filter by that. Now, as you can see, we have all of these candidates. Most candidates in this case will have the bachelor's degree at this level who have met the specific skill and the right experience. And so there's only going to be a handful that this is going to filter out who don't have the education component. So let's go ahead and remove them. And now we are down to 15. So we're getting closer to a number that starts to get reasonable, where we can go through and be very kind of more methodical with reviewing the resumes and making sure that everything lines up. Now, in this case, I have a lot of candidates, but there are some cases where maybe I don't have quite as many and my filtering actually cuts down too many and I don't have enough to choose from or to review. So then I might remove one of these criteria and get a broader candidate pool. But in this case, I want to get it down even more than 15 because I really want to get as close alignment just to see, because if I have 15, I really want to see if any of these candidates are the perfect fit. They match all the boxes that my hiring manager is expecting. So in this case, the hiring manager said, it would be great if they had relevant industry experience. We work in a relatively niche industry, and if you could find somebody that has experience in one of these competitors or really understands this industry, that would be the ideal candidate. Since I have enough candidates to look at, maybe I do try to narrow it down and see what pops up. So in this case, I'm going to add in an additional filter. Now keep in mind, I don't always add this filter. This is just hypothetical, but I just want to show you how this process works of whittling down the candidates. We now have 6 candidates who have the specific skills, the experience, the education, and the industry. So these candidates would be my A-list candidates that I'd want to start with. So I would work through interviewing each one of these candidates to see if I can get a slate of 5 initial candidates to send over to the hiring manager to get them into the broader interview process. If for whatever reason I would go through these screens and they just don't really make sense, then I would broaden it up to look at the next group and then the next group. So I kind of keep on expanding from there. I'll start most specifically first and then reverse it and get broader and broader. Now keep in mind that a good recruiter is also going to be looking for candidates on their own as well. That means that they're going to go into LinkedIn and other places to source using similar criteria and looking for the perfect candidates, because they can't wait around hoping and praying that somebody happens to land in their lap through an inbound application, which is when we put a job out, we run ads. That's an inbound application, whereas we would do outbound sourcing if we wanted to go off and find our own, and we go off to places like LinkedIn. So we're going to go off on LinkedIn most likely for this level position and also be sourcing our own candidates. And of course, you're going to factor in that there's going to be some employee referrals and internal applicants that will come in, and they seem to come in at the last minute. So this is what the pipeline would look like for a highly desirable role in a well-known and well-regarded company. So keep in mind, it's not because you're not qualified and can't do the job. And to be quite honest with you, there will be some candidates who are a great fit, who would do a great job in this role, but they won't get seen because they don't have these specific parameters or requirements on their resume. And that's where the frustration lies. Reality is in a highly competitive job market like we are today, there's always going to be people who have the right stuff that are going to be more qualified than you. So the purpose of this video isn't to discourage people and to get them thinking that there's no hope of getting hired, because there actually is. If you look at the process that I narrowed people down and you use that to your advantage, so few of these job applicants are actually truly qualified that if you meet the requirements and you know how to effectively market yourself through a really well-designed resume and targeted networking to follow it up, you're going to give yourself a huge advantage to get into this top 6 or top 7. Now, some of the stuff you can't control. You're just not going to be able to control it. But we also don't know what the recruiter's parameters are. So each job is going to be different. Each hiring manager is going to be different. Each company is going to be different. But we can give ourselves the best possible chance if we use strategy, knowing what we know now. And again, that's where a really targeted resume and a really good LinkedIn strategy can really pay dividends for you in your job search. So if you're somebody that's struggling and you don't know how to get into this top group, you don't know how to make the cut and get your resume seen, I actually have created a very robust training course for that. It's called Resume Rocketfuel, and it's designed to teach you how to write your resume that gets you into this top bucket for jobs that you're highly qualified for. Kind of a good litmus test is if you're applying to jobs that you're a reasonably good fit for, and you consistently are getting rejected, it's almost always a resume issue, and we can create resumes that are more targeted and more precise for the roles that we're applying to give ourselves a better chance. So check out Resume Rocketfuel if you think you need help there. And if you want to improve your chances of getting that phone call back, we want to do some targeted networking in addition to it. We leverage tools like LinkedIn, which is my favorite one to do so. So I created a course called Unlocking LinkedIn that teaches you exactly how to do that. And honestly, as you can see in this exercise, applying for jobs is probably the least efficient method of looking for a job. So if you can skip the recruiter altogether and get right into the hiring process, that's going to be highly preferred. Check out Unlocking LinkedIn if you think you need help there. And of course, once you get into the interview process, you want to make sure that you market yourself correctly. You don't want to blow that opportunity through poor interviewing. And that's where the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp comes in. We take you from job search all the way through job offer and every step in between, breaking it down into bite-sized chunks with some tips and tools in order for you to perform your best in that interview, and then make sure you don't leave a dime on the table. So make sure you check that one out too if you think you need help there. But anyway, hope you found this video enlightening. I know it's getting a little bit on the long side, so I'm going to wrap it up. But as you can see, this is what the average recruiter is experiencing for one specific job, keeping in mind that they've got 15 to 20 other jobs that they're oftentimes recruiting for at the same time. So it can get to be a bit of a mess, and there's a little bit of luck involved, but we can create our own luck through some really careful strategy. Anyway, appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.